Okay, now moving on to 7th in the Constructors' Championship, Williams. So for Williams, there are two drivers for the 2023 F1 season, Alex Albon and Logan Sargent. Albon, of course, in his, fourth season of Formula One. Sargent, rookie, of course, came in after a pretty good rookie season in Formula Two. Now, looking at the teammate head-to-head battle, this was probably one of the biggest, kind of most lopsided battles in F1. Actually, the most lopsided battle in many metrics over the course of the 2023 season, and actually just looking at historical data as well. Probably one of the biggest, most lopsided teammate battles in a very long time. So, points. Albon 27, Sargent 1. Of course, that was that 10th place I picked up at the United States Grand Prix after Leclerc and Hamilton were disqualified for excess plank wear. Average finishing position. So this is the one that I think is probably the most troubling for me. Albon 11, Sargent 15.6. So that's a difference of 4.6 basically positions. And looking at historical data, like I have a lot of data from basically the entire turbo hybrid era from even before then. 4.6 is an absolutely massive difference. I would say anything above 2 is pretty bad, is a pretty big difference. So the fact that it's 4.6 positions is absolutely massive. And I think it's something that Sargent's really going to want to improve next year. Qualifying head-to-head, this one did not go much better either. 22-0 in favor of Albon. So this was effectively a whitewashing. The first proper whitewashing we've had in, I think, since Verstappen did the same to Albon in 2020. Looking at the qualifying gap, basically just shy of 0.6 of a second, 0.584. Which is a pretty big margin. Comparing with Nicholas Latifi last year, of course, the driver who Sargent replaced, gap between Albon and Latifi last year was just over 0.6 of a second. So in qualifying, Sargent has been a small upgrade on Albon this past season. Of course, you would hope in his second season next year, which of course is another thing to say, but in the second season next year, you hope that that gap gets smaller, and of course the race pace and that race gap gets smaller as well. Average starting position for Albon 12, for Sargent 17.2, so that's about over 5 positions, and definitely a big reason, big contributor to why the average finishing positions are so different. In my power rankings, Albon I thought had a very good year. On average was 7th. He basically spent most of the year inside the top 10. Sargent 19th. So not a very good year for Sargent. I think on the whole, if you looked at all my drivers, I think he'd basically be only ahead of Nick DeVries. So for Sargent, of course, he was, of course, I think last week at the time of recording this video, last week he was announced, or maybe it was the start of this week, but he was announced that he would be continuing with Williams for next season, 2024. I think realistically there weren't really any options that were substantially better, and I think they were really just holding out to see if anyone put a massive bag of money on the table, that an offer that they couldn't refuse them. Seems like that wasn't the case, so we get Sargent again for 2024. I think he did improve for the second half of the season, but I think there will be a lot of pressure on him to do better, do better next year. So looking at Williams and how they kind of progressed through the 2023 F1 season, the first 11 races, their average qualifying position was 14.8, and they got 11 points. Second half of the season, average qualifying position was 14.4. Small improvement, not a massive improvement, but 17 points, which compared to 11 points, only 6 points more, but when you have such small numbers, 6 points is a pretty big improvement. And they really solidified 7th in the championship in that second half of the season. There was a stretch for a while where it looked like they were going to be 7th, and no one would really have any chance of catching them. But AlphaTauri did put up a good fight towards the end of the year. And I think if AlphaTauri had maybe brought their upgrades a couple races sooner, maybe Ricciardo doesn't break his wrist and is able to settle in a bit quicker, they maybe end up with a couple more points and they catch Williams for 7th. But Williams gets 7th place in the Constructors, which is their best finish in the Constructors Championship since 2017, when their drivers were Felipe Massa and Lance Stroll. Now, looking at Williams as a constructor and how they've kind of progressed the last 4 years. 2020, of course, everyone remembers 2019 was the absolute disaster year, basically rock bottom. 2020, was their first year of kind of trying to dig their way out of that. They still had 0 points, 10th in the constructors, and their average pole gap was 2.185 seconds. 2021, big improvement. Their average pole gap went down to 1.739 seconds. Of course, third year Russell in the team, second year of with Latifi in the team. Both drivers I think improved from 2020. They also had quite a bit of good luck. They ended up with 23 points and were 8th in the constructors, so ahead of Alfa Romeo and Haas. Of course, that year George Russell got his qualifying podium at the Belgian Grand Prix. Nicholas Latifi was in a podium position at the Hungarian Grand Prix after the chaos that Bottas and Stroll caused at the start of that race. And I think he ended up 7th in the end there. But those kind of factors contribute quite a bit. Of course, Russell had some very, very good races that year as well. 2022, first year of the new regulations, not such a good year. 8 points, which is of course a drop off from the 23 the year before, and they fell down to 10th, last in the Constructors Championship. Average pole gap 2.25 seconds, 2.25 seconds, which was last by a considerable margin as well. Of course, Albon and Latifi were their drivers last year. So then this year, 2023, 28 points, 20 more than last year, a move up to 7th in the Constructors, and their average pole gap 1.299 seconds, which is a massive improvement from the year before. So they've basically dropped almost an entire second closer to pole. And of course, with Albon being their driver both years and the driver who was the lead driver in qualifying, that number is going to be a pretty good indicator of how much Williams have improved. So for next year, for Williams, I think they should be pretty happy with their year. 7th, I think, was realistically the best that they were going to get. For 2024, I think it's going to be really difficult to push upwards, though, from there. I think with Williams' current budget and the infrastructure they have, I think going forward from 7th will be quite difficult. And I don't really think they have the driver lineup at the moment to really push beyond 7th place either. Even if they had a car, for example, that was equal with the Alpine, for example, I think Albon, of course, would be a good match for Ocon and Gasly. But I think at this point, Sargent would be quite a ways behind both Gasly and Ocon. But I think, for next year, I think it's going to be really about trying to push to be a little bit closer to the front, a little bit closer to Alpine, I think will be their main target for 2024. So that's all for my video, kind of looking at Williams' 2023 Formula 1 season. And next will be, of course, Alpine, 6th in the Constructors. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.